In February, we went to witness the devastation and destruction of the kibbutzim. And as we walked from one burnt out shell of a home to another, and then another, we became acutely aware that it wasn't just the homes and the kindergartens and the parks and the buildings that were destroyed, but that there were people who were burned alive in their homes. It wasn't just the buildings. And the same with the Chorban, the same with the destruction. Yes, the fact that the Beis Hamikdash, the fact that the temple was destroyed, the fact that we lost the place where Hashem's presence was felt most strongly was such a tragedy. But that's not the totality of the devastation. We have to remember the people. And Kina 17 describes in graphic detail the horrors that the people went through at the time of the destruction. I think perhaps Kina 17 is the most graphic of all of our kinos, as it describes women who stooped so low, were so desperate that they ate their own children. To put this in perspective, Rav Nissim Mengel, who was a child survivor of the Holocaust, several years ago went back to Auschwitz-Birkenau, and as he stood at the tracks, he recalled how he stood at those very tracks at the age of 10 years old, how they had just gotten off the cattle cars and were lining up for the selection. And he describes how their fate, life or death, was in a finger, left or right. That determined whether they lived or whether they died. That determined where they went. And he recalls how he's standing in this line and he's holding on to his mother's hand. And a pseudo-commando, one of the Polish Jews who was working for the Nazis, came over to this mother and he meant well, and he said to her, "You should know that when mothers come with children, they send both of them directly to the gas chambers." She said, "Let go of your child and save yourself. Otherwise, you're both going to perish." And Rev Mengel says he felt his mother holding his hand even harder as she said, "I will never let go of my child." A few minutes later, he came back to this woman, and once again, he pleaded with her. He said, "Let go of your child. You're both going to go to the gas chambers." He came back a third time, and he's pretending to arrange some of the bags so the Nazis wouldn't detect. And he explains to the mother, he says, "Just yesterday, a woman and her child came from Hungary." And he begins to describe the most horrific things that the Nazis did, specifically because the mother was there, to torture the child in her presence. And he said, "I'm begging you, let go of the child." And once again, she said, "I will never let go of my child." Somehow, they miraculously survived the selection. And he talks about how they made it through. I don't think any of them survived. I think he was the only sole survivor of his family. But they survived the selection. To think that even in the depths of hell of Auschwitz, mothers still held on to their children. They still held on to that which we know makes a Yiddish mama. just goes to show you how terrible things were at the time of the Khurban. It's truly incomprehensible. We can't even fathom it. Worse than October 7th. Worse than the Holocaust. We have no way to even imagine the depravity. We have no way to even imagine what was going on. And Kina 17 brings this to our minds and makes us acutely aware of what the people went through at the time of the destruction. But as Rabbi Erlanger mentioned, within all the kinos, embedded in the lament is hope. Because the Jewish story is always one of hope. Every single one of these verses in Kina 17 begins with the word im, if. And it describes potential. It describes the most horrific things that could possibly happen that did happen. But it says them as im, if, to remind us that the same way these tragic, horrific possibilities came to be, all of the national hopes and dreams that we have as a people, all of those dreams can become a reality as well. There is always hope for our future. There's always hope if to turn it all around, and the choice is and always will be ours.